Okay, I'm going to help you get started on the name generator assignment. The objective, as you can see here, is to become familiar with something called conditional programming. It's also known as selective execution. Sometimes as programmers we refer to it as if statements. So you have specific parts of your code that only run when a condition is true. So let's get started. If you go to codiva.io and create a new project, I'm just going to try it without logging in because I don't have an account. And let's just get rid of the part here that says hello Codiva. Or in fact, you could just change it to say welcome to the, and then here we're going to say name generator, but we have to have a specific theme for this type of name generator. If you're familiar with name generators, they look like this. So you might have something like, what's your dragon name? And it has all of these possibilities, all these options, and it depends on characteristics about you or your identity, such as the last letter of your first name, whatever that is, there's a corresponding adjective, and then whatever the first letter of your first name is, there's a corresponding type of dragon, I guess. Anyway, so that's one example. For this one, I'm going to do something interesting I just thought of, and it is a universe crossover name generator. So I'll explain in a second what that is. So what I mean by that is there are a lot of different fictional universes. There's the Marvel Cinematic Universe that has all the superheroes in it. There's the DC Extended Universe, which has all of the other superheroes. There's also Pokemon, that's a fictional universe. There's Harry Potter, there's Lord of the Rings, Star Trek, Star Wars. So those are some of the most popular fictional universes. And we're going to do some mashups, some of the names from each of those universes. All right, so the first things first, let's create a scanner so that we can accept input from them. So at the very top, I need to import java.util.scanner, semicolon. And then I'm going to create a scanner object. Just call it keyboard reader. Okay. And now I want to ask them a few questions. I need to ask them questions where there could be multiple answers, but there's a specific answer associated with each person taking this test or answering this question. For example, on this name generator, it asks you the last letter of your first name or the first letter of your first name. So I'm just going to do your phone number. Let's just say, what is the last digit of your phone number? All right, let's save the response, and we can use an int or a whole number data type. So let's say last digit, that's a good name for it, and set it to be whatever keyboard reader dot next capital int gives us. And then we need to ask another question so that this is a multi-part name that we generate. Let's ask them something like, what month were they born in? And then we need to store that, whatever the response is. Let's store that as a text variable, so we use the data type string. So let's say month born, that's a good name for the variable, and set that to be whatever keyboard reader gives us when we say next line. And then we also need to create a string to represent each part of the name that we're generating. So let's just do part 1 and part 2. And you might notice that I didn't give a value to either of these variables yet. And that's because we're going to use conditional programming to do that. We're going to say if they entered the number 1 for their phone number, then the value should be this. If they entered 2, it should be something else, right? Okay, so this is the fun part. We get to say something like if last digit is equal to 0, and then we can say, let's set part 1 to be Harry. And of course that could be Harry Potter, right? You could come up with a bunch of other options for each of the possibilities. So if they enter the number 1, we could do Gandalf. We could say if they enter the number 2, part 1 equals Jean-Luc. I believe this is one of the characters from Star Trek, but I've never actually seen Star Trek. And you could do this for each of the 10 digits. So we could have one for 3. What's another one? We could do Tony Stark. All right. So there we've got at least 4 different universes. In fact, let's add one more. If last digit equals 4, let's do Ash Ketchum. Okay, I've only done half of the possibilities that we need to have here, so you can continue to do that on your own with whatever theme you're using. I'm going to start with the second part, and part 2 uses the variable month born, and that determines which name they get. So we can say if month born dot equals January, then we can set the value for part 2 to be something. I want to point something out here that you might have noticed. There's no equals sign here like there was in the previous one. And the reason for that is because Java treats number data types different from how it treats text data types. And so when you compare values of those data types, you have to do it a little differently. So when you're doing a string comparison, you have to do this way. You have to type out the word equals and then have parentheses with what you're comparing it to. Okay, so if it equals January, let's just say part 2 equals Skywalker. If it equals February, I'm going to copy and paste some of these, make it quicker. Let's make it the gray. If it equals March, let's make it Ketchum for Ash Ketchum. If it equals April, let's do Stark. And one more. If it equals May, let's do, what was the other one we had on here? Harry Potter. Let's do Potter. Okay. All right. So, like I said before, you'll have to add the other options. In this case, there are 12 months, so we're not even halfway there. Just have to add 7 more of those. And in the end, you're going to piece together parts 1 and part 2. So let's just say a new variable called full name or generated name, and then we set it to be part 1 plus part 2. And then we can output that all together. Let's just say your universe crossover name is, and then say generated name. All right, let's test this. And it looks like we have an error here. It tells us part 1 and part 2 might not have been initialized. And that's because it's possible that the digit they enter isn't one of these numbers. So when it's doing the comparisons, it might never find one that fits. And in that case, part 1 will never have been given a value. So one way to fix that is to just give it a default value of nothing. And now it's not giving us an error anymore. Okay, so let's click run and test it. It says, what is the last digit of your phone number? Well, mine, the last digit happens to be 8, which is, of course, a problem here. We didn't have 8 as one of the options to get a name, so I'll just lie and say it's 4. And then it asks what month I was born in. And I was born in September, which, of course, okay, it appears we have a problem. And now I remember what the problem is. For whatever reason, Java's scanner fails when you try to use the same scanner object to get multiple data types, such as an integer, a number data type, and then also use that same scanner for a string data type. So one way we could really quickly fix that is we could say keyboard reader. Instead, let's make that say text reader, and then have another one that we use for numbers. So we can say another scanner called number reader equals new scanner. And then we'll use the text reader to get the input for the month. So we'll say text reader right there. And then when we're grabbing a number, we'll use number reader. Okay. All right, now that should work correctly. Let's try it one more time. Okay, so last digit of my phone number, I decided I would just tell it that it was the number 4. And what month was I born in? I was born in September. That's not one of the options. So let's just say February, and it's important that we spell it correctly, otherwise it wouldn't detect that condition being true, and it wouldn't give us the name Gray. And so our universe crossover name is Ash the Gray. And as you can see here, there's no space between those two names, so we could fix that. Just pasting, just by adding a little space there. All right, let's try it one more time. So if I said number 4 for my phone number and February, now it should say Ash the Gray. That's the name that it generated for me. Okay, so this is pretty close to being finished. I believe you just have to do at least 2 different inputs, which we've got. The last digit of my phone number is 1, and then the month I was born in was another. But then I also have to do at least 10 different choices or 10 different options for each one. So right now I've only got 5 for each. So yours is going to have to expand on that a little bit. In fact, if you're doing months, you should really have all 12 months as options. And if you're doing like letters of somebody's name, then of course you'd probably want to go all the way up to all 26 letters. Okay, let me know if you have any questions. Feel free to email me. But that's the assignment. When you're done, you can copy and paste it into Canvas. Remember, just like that.